The great Decutri never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father. That's good. Let's kick it. Hey, listen, and welcome to A Link to the Filmcast. I'm your host, David Reese, in the show where we're still adventuring across the realms of Hyrule and the silver screen. You may notice the logo's a little different, and we will be doing the episodes just a little differently now. We'll talk about that in our second section, but today we're going to be talking all about villains and our random Zelda Wiki. Today's random Zelda Wiki. Drum roll, please. West Safia's Table. Safia? The thing about the Zelda games is that there's so many pronunciations that, like, I remember Kokiri was one that was hard, or Kakariko, the way people would pronounce different things until we got the voice acting in the Breath of the Wild. Sheikah, I think a lot of that stuff was pretty well established, but it really took that voice acting in Breath of the Wild to really make it more solidified. I guess that's the problem with having dialogue text-based games for 35 years before you actually throw in a voice. But today's wiki article is West Safia's Table. We'll just say it like that. And this is the cold region just north of the Gerudo Desert. I believe the 8th heroine statue is there. I think there's a Lionel in the area. And I think I mentioned this on a different episode, but I want to treat this as a jumping on point. Every episode, we're doing a random Zelda Wiki page just to explore the Zelda Wiki and see what kind of content may or may not be on our radar. Kind of give you a flashback of nostalgia if it's something random that you remember, or something that if you don't know, maybe you learn something new about the franchise. But I want to treat this as your jumping on point episode. First, I want to address the elephant in the room. I do have a new logo. I'm going to change up the show just a little bit. And I want to make it more entertaining. I've had this show for a year. My very first episodes were really rough. I've gotten better, and as I re-listen and as I think about where I want the show to go, I needed to take 2 months. It's been 2 months since I've published the last episode. Sony Extended Universe movies really took it out of me. But I wanted to go back to the bone of creating a movie-based and a Zelda-based podcast and try to marry the two subjects. Changed my workflow, changed how I create this thing, and I'm ready to go. This should be coming out October 6th. It will come out October 6th, I promise you. Still planning on doing Monday morning releases every other week. My number one priority is getting one episode every 2 weeks. I want to hit that date. That's my commitment to you guys, and I want this to be something I want to listen to as well. I want this to be good. So, let's talk about a subject that isn't a movie this time. And we're going to talk about something that is done well and is done not well even more often. Creating a good, enticing villain. What makes a good villain? We can't pull it off in a single episode. There's a lot to make a good villain. There's a long list of examples of stuff that works well that people responded to, and stuff that didn't work well that people did not respond to. There's also a list of a little in between. It's also on a spectrum. What do people expect from their villains? Those perspectives change. And then what do people want from their villains? What they expect and what they want might not be the same thing. And that's really the crux of this podcast. When I look at movies, it's what's happening versus what I want to happen. And I'm really liquefying that or breaking down this subject into Villainy. So you're going to see this episode's part 1. I'm not going to do a part 2 right away. I'm going to put some time for thought, some time for audience feedback in between, time to do more research in between episodes. So we're going to do a part 1 and don't expect a part 2 for a couple months. That's totally fine. So there's different media, different types of villains. We're talking about just in broadest of terms in any media. We're talking about books, video games, movies, any type of story that has a conflict resolution, and basically where they give the hero something to fight against and a quest, really. So our term for villain is going to be super broad, and we'll kind of narrow our scopes in on it. And different media do villains differently. A video game villain, boss fights, and different genres have different kind of demeanors and standards for their villains. And then movie villains is super genre specific. Book villains depends on the world building. The world also shaped these villains and has a considerable part to the villain that we must consider. But I think if you boil it down, there's about 5 categories that good villains have in common. 5 things that villains that are done really well can relate to, whether it's Darth Vader from Star Wars, Scar from The Lion King, Sauron. They may have their ups and downs. I'm not saying any villain is perfect, but I'm saying a lot of great villains that are cited in history. Voldemort, Thanos. There's these 5 things that they all seem to have in common, and some things more so than other. So the first item, number 1, is a good villain having a strong connection to the main character. This stirs the drama of the conflict. Just really raises the stakes. The big relation you can think of is Darth Vader and in Empire with the big reveal. Yes, this is a spoiler cast, so if you don't want Empire spoilers, Darth Vader is Luke's father, which really raises the stakes. Before, when Darth Vader was just some figure chasing down the rebels, that's different than knowing Luke Skywalker, his dad, is the chief bad guy. Well, and we were introduced to the Emperor in that movie. But there's a connection to the character, his dad. There's also the connection of Harry Potter and Voldemort. Voldemort literally tried to kill Harry, and he ended up killing his parents instead. So there's a super strong connection between them. There's vengeance plots typically have this connection. Revenge stories, westerns, there's always some sort of connection, some way that the main character was wronged by this villain, by the antagonist of the story. Scar, Lion King, is Simba's uncle, his dad's brother. There's connection through family. There's the connection knowing that Scar killed his father and blamed him. Our main character having that connection. And we'll look at some examples, more examples as we go through. Number 2, a good villain has clear morality. From the villain's perspective, they have an agenda. They are not, quote unquote, evil just to be evil. Unless that's what makes them interesting, and they do it in an interesting way. And I have the perfect example about that in a bit. The ideological villain, like the villain we'll talk about next week, is one that's driven by an idea. I want to make the world a better place through these methods that I deem necessary in order for prosperity. In the eyes of the hero, the protagonist, whatever the means to the end is for that antagonist, that's not jiving with the world buildings, code of ethics, our morals that we have come to accept, and different premises set by the author in the beginning of the book or game, movie. There's an idea that drives our antagonist, and their means to get there is in conflict with our protagonist, naturally creating conflict that drives the story forward. There's the tragedy morality of a villain. The villain is that way because they were wrong. Something happened to our villain that turned them. Being a tragic villain, not to harp on Star Wars, but we also have our Anakin Skywalker example. If you just look at the prequel movies, episodes 1 through 3, we have a promising candidate, strong with the Force. There's a prophecy he could fulfill, and through self-interest and deception, ends up on the dark side. He is a good guy turned villain through manipulation, and ultimately they use the power of love in that story to make Anakin Skywalker's story more tragic. Another person you could think of that makes a villain tragic are villains with painful backstories. Think of Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones. Now, is he necessarily a villain in Game of Thrones? That's an interesting subject. To different houses and different characters, he is the villain. So we will take it from there. And basically the way he acts is from his upbringing. Being hated, rejected by his father, by A, causing the death of his wife, and B, by having his physical deformity as heir to the Lannisters. Ultimately, it's this tragic backstory of Tyrion's upbringing and the way things were helped steer his direction on how he acts and makes the decisions the way he does and where he's willing to cross lines. Other villains you could think of is a lot of Batman villains seem to be tragic. Batman villains, the way they resonate with people is that they have sad backstories. They were wronged by the brokenness of Gotham, the brokenness of the world, maybe by Batman himself, and that's what makes them who they are. And then the other part of having a morality that villains have is relatability. Sometimes villains have aspects to their story that an audience member could relate to. And funny enough, when I'm doing research for this episode, I found Mojo Jojo as one of the top villains with this trait. If you don't know Mojo Jojo, you might be from a different generation than myself. The Cartoon Network, back in the 2000s, had a show called The Powerpuff Girls. And one of the main antagonists in the Powerpuff Girls was Mojo Jojo, a monkey with super intelligence who wanted to get back at Professor Uranium and his perfect superhero girls. Because Mojo Jojo was initially a project of the professor and feels abandoned. And with his abandonment and negative view towards the humans, that's what drives Mojo Jojo to commit the crimes. Another easy one you could think about, it's a Batman villain, is Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy just wants the environment to be safe from pollution and from mankind. And the way she goes about it is the part that drives the conflict. But it's a premise that we can all relate to. The third part, number 3 of 5 things good villains have in common, is that the villain has to be a worthy adversary. They can't be a pushover. They have to make the climax of the movie a climax. They have to be a worthy opponent. Namely, one of the best adversaries out there that you could think of is Batman and the Joker. Batman gets outsmarted by the Joker, and Joker outsmarts Batman. On any given encounter, it's a toss-up who's going to win, Batman or the Joker. Because the Batman has lost to the Joker before. And the Joker does get into Arkham. He does get captured by Batman time and time again. But then he continues to outsmart bats. That's what keeps the Joker interesting. It's not a one-sided fight. It's a coin toss. It's like a game of chess, in multiple games of chess, of two equally skilled opponents. A thing Marvel does that works super good for the MCU is they have a villain type called the Mirror villain, under this worthy adversary category. So if you have Iron Man, who is a man with a machine exoskeleton of iron as his power, what do you make as a worthy adversary for him? A different man in an iron suit of power, i.e. Iron Warmonger, I believe. Jebediah from the first Iron Man movie, and then they do that again and again. They get villains that have identical powers to the main hero, Captain America and Red Skull. I mean, what are two opposites? The face of America or the face of Nazi Germany in a superhero setting? That's a mere copy of the main character. The thing I like about the Zelda games when it comes to a worthy adversary is that Ganon, most of the time, is a worthy adversary. And he's like almost a mirror of our main character when it comes to his sword abilities, but he's also got sorcerer powers as well. We'll look at that a little more. Number 4 of the 5 items that good villains have in common is that a good villain needs to have a compelling backstory. You need a villain that is a hero from their own perspective, from their own side. Now, whether it's morally right or wrong, to us, the viewer, is different from the villain's perspective. The two main ones I can think about when I think about villains with compelling backstories, which aren't justified just by saying they have backstories that exist and elaborated on, doesn't mean I agree with what they say. We have Voldemort. From his perspective, wizarding should be a pure blood affair. And all he's doing is rooting out the bad blood to help keep the genes pure. Obviously, as a listener and as a host, we know this is wrong. But from Voldemort's perspective, from his backstory, he thinks he's doing what is right, and that's what drives him. Another one that's talked about is Thanos. He believes the universe doesn't have enough resources for everybody. Truly, in his heart of hearts, he believes that if there were just half the number of people, there would be enough resources for everyone to happily prosper and thrive. Obviously, getting rid of half of the universe's population is wrong. But to Thanos' ideology, his thoughts, his perspective. That is his upbringing. That is what drives him. And our backstory with his connection to Gamora helps it be compelling. The number 5 of items that good villains have in common is that a villain should be fun. A villain should, through whatever their uniqueness is, the Joker, he is fun. He's a fun villain. He is an agent of chaos. You never know what to expect with him. You see him on screen and you're like, okay, what's he doing now? You're intrigued. A villain that is bad just to be bad. There's only so many ways that the evil laughter and the I want to take over the world can buy you a good villain. The performance, the way they act, if they give a menacing demeanor. I mean, the Joker's such a menacing figure. I mean, even just let's look at Batman the Dark Knight's Joker with Heath Ledger. Oh my gosh. What a performance he gave. Whenever he explained, whenever he talked, you weren't just scared of him, but you were scared of his thoughts, the ideas he was having and what he would do to get them. Other ideas, you got Agent Smith from the Matrix movies. Those black sunglasses and just that stern, straight face. Whenever he shows up on the screen, you know he's business and it's a chase. Hans Gruber from Die Hard. He's got a little different appeal. He's a little more classy and he's calculated. But then the great part about him is as the movie goes on, it's fun to see him unravel. He doesn't do the full unraveling till the very end. He keeps his composure super well. But when you see Hans Gruber acting on the screen, you know something's happening. There's a reason he's there. I guess one of the points that didn't make the list, maybe I'll make it my own 6th point or a bonus point, is that I feel like a villain needs to be present to have an impact on the conflict as the game, as the book, as the movie progresses. The villain needs to be a threat to our protagonist. The villain can't just be at the end and the hero defeats them and roll credits. The villain actually has to do bad stuff throughout the story to help us as an audience not like them and root for the hero, and to make it more rewarding once the villain is defeated and we have resolution. So in summary, let's just call that a 6th point. There are 6 items that good villains have in common, and this can be variable. Number 1, good villains have a strong connection to the main character. Number 2, a clear villain has their own morality that is clear. Number 3, a good villain is a worthy adversary to our protagonist. Number 4, a good villain has a compelling backstory. Number 5, a good villain should be fun. And number 6, a good villain should be present throughout the story, not just the end. Watching movies, as a kid, villains are all about the smoke, the fire and the smoke, and the performance and the show. It's flashy to be a villain as a kid. They got a big curly mustache. They wear all black. They have a certain voice that just sounds evil. But as you grow up and you realize there's different layers of villainy, there's different layers of morality, things that shake people to the bone. It's not always the most flashy villain. Sometimes it's just what they think, what they say, and other things they do that are more subtle that can really make your skin crawl. That's where psychological villains, Hannibal Lecter, that's where they get you. And then there's the physical component of him eating people. And then there's also the anti-hero, which is super weird. This is a different dynamic I want to explore more. I just wanted to preach it out into the world. It's where you have an antagonist versus a villain. Is their malicious intent bad to the perspective of the audience and the hero? That makes them an antagonist or an anti-hero. And then the villain is whatever's opposing that force, which is almost like 3D chess that's just begging to be dissected. And I wanna. Because you think about Deadpool. He's likable and audiences love him and eat him up. But he's not your traditional hero. And his morals and stuff don't always line up with what we would do and what is right. But I think that's where I'm going to leave part 1 of our villain discussion for today. Take a short break, and then we'll wrap up the episode. So I talked about it at the beginning. I took 2 months from publishing episodes, and I'm trying to rebrand the podcast. The big change, I changed the logo and the name. Instead of a punny name, a link to the Filmcast, which I thought was good, I decided to use our social handle because it's more descriptive of what it is. The Zelda Filmcast. Obviously, we are going to discuss all components of the Zelda movie. We are going to dive deep every time news breaks out. One of the episodes I have lined up is going over everything we know about the Zelda movie so far. We've already done watches of directors, producers, their movies that are attached to the Zelda movie, different movies of similar genres. And we're going to keep that philosophy moving towards the Zelda movie, and I want to keep that name that we have, the Zelda Filmcast. I want to encourage interaction, discussion. I'm going to use the platform X for now for communicating. I'll also be hopping around on the Zelda Reddit. Feel free to reach out to me. I want to thank the listeners that have been listening for the last year, or since the last year, this show, and seeing it get better in my eyes. This show is getting better. The biggest problem I acknowledge is the show being inconsistent with the release schedule, and I want to make that 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, I want an episode. Solutions? I am going to deliver content reliably by altering my workflow to better fit my personal life and producing at least 2 episodes at a time. By producing 2 episodes at a time, I can have an episode ready just in case a life event comes up. I have something ready to go. That's my success for this show. For the listener, it's a higher quality podcast with more time, better workflow into creating the episodes. More research is done, a deeper analysis, and a more concise, focused listening experience. And for me, I want to be giving you a consistent flow of thought. We're keeping the Zelda Filmcast as our show. We got a new logo. It's green, going from red to green. The format's going to be just a little different. We're going to have that classic intro. I'm going to do some sort of movie quote. We're going to have a little chit chat, random Zelda Wiki, our main quest, our side quest, listener mail or review shout outs, and then we'll call it a day. I want to engage with the audience more. I don't want to harp on it. Also, my goal in this next year is to have guest hosts and do interviews with other people in the Zelda community that I think would be fun and relatable to film. I also want to have stretch goals of, if I'm doing well with the podcast, maybe creating a video version of the podcast or a YouTube Let's Play for some Zelda games. But those are stretch goals I want to work towards. But first, I got to get down this consistency, and I want to grow the show to something I'm proud of. So this is the part of the show where I'll normally answer questions sent to ZeldaFilmcast@gmail.com or questions sent to ZeldaFilmcast on X. There's also a send a message link in the show description. These questions can be about Zelda, movies, life, or whatever you want. I'm excited for this reboot, this requel, however you want to talk about it. And I want to move strong moving forward. And as always, may the Triforce be with you.